Hello. Today I want to talk about a bit of a morbid subject, but it is something that I've thought about for a very long time. It's about how I completely disagree with the statement that ending your life is a cowardly thing to do. I disagree with it for a few reasons. And I think the more accurate description is not cowardly, but selfish. Now, I've had thoughts of ending my life for the past 12 years. They didn't begin as soon as I started feeling low. They began about a year or two into it. And obviously I'm still here. And it's the selfishness part of it that prevents me from doing it. Well, also because the idea of dying is incredibly scary. So why it's not cowardly is, if you actually really think about it, every single living thing has a biological urge to survive. It is written deep down in their DNA to try and remain alive, even if they've already passed on their genetic seed. Like, if they've already reproduced, which is the main goal of life, they still fight for survival. So for a person who wants to end it, they are overriding this core behaviour of survival. They are essentially stuck between a rock and a hard place on the maximum magnitude. And they feel that every single second, or the future that is presented to them, is essentially torture, and they will have to endure torture, or they can opt out. Now, from a healthy person's perspective, the idea of dying is terrifying. And even from an unwell person's perspective, the idea of death is terrifying because it's the unknown. It's, everything that you've ever experienced suddenly just ceasing to exist. And that's scary. You also have to think about the method in which you're going to do it. Now, in the UK, guns are extremely restricted and handguns are illegal. So the simplest method is simply not there. You have to keep in mind, okay, how is my body going to be found? How is it going to be presented? Not only to the people that find you, but to the people who you love. You've got two groups of ways to do it. You've got the quick, the less painful way, and the less risky ways to do it. Jumping in front of a train, off a building, hanging. But that does leave your body in a quite brutal state once it's found, and it also means that the people, you can impact others. If you jump in front of a train, there's the driver, there's the passengers. Off a building, people might see you. So you're actually inflicting a lot of suffering upon other people. And this is my point to later. Inflicting suffering onto others is a selfish thing to do. despite it might be in your way out. Also, if you go through with those methods, you know, you're not going to get an open casket, and those people that have to, you know, verify it is you who has passed, they're going to have a horrible core memory of seeing you in that state. Now, if you go for a way that will leave your body presented in a, you know, that could be presented in an open casket, well, your options are kind of restricted to overdosing or poison. And these options are very, very risky. You also have of your wrists, and the thought of, you know, the blood, that gets to me. That does get to me. Now, the risks with the poison and the overdosing is taking the wrong things, or not taking enough of it, or the things that you take means that you have to endure severe pain internally for potentially hours, and that seems like a long, grueling way to do it. You know, you might be left in a nice state, or relatively nice state, but to actually endure that for a long period of time, knowing what's coming, that seems very brutal to me. So, you know, you can minimize the suffering inflicted on others if you go for a more quieter, less brutal way of doing it, but you do inflict a hell of a lot more pain on yourself. So when you think about, you know, the options to actually do it, none of it is easy, none of it's simple, and none of it is cowardly. So how I would describe ending your life is actually more selfish. It's a selfish thing to do. And yes, there's arguments against it. You know, you're being kind to yourself in a way that you can escape the torment and torture. But if you have one person, at least one person that loves you, I do believe it's selfish. So if you have one person that loves you, most people actually have several people that love them, then those people will actually never forget it. They will think about your passing every day for several years. And it would take several years for them to not think about it every day. If that ever comes, they may never not think about it every day. So the reason for this is because you were physically healthy, and they will perceive it as them failing to save you. Now, obviously that's not necessarily true, but it does often happen. So if they've got this burden now of you leaving them, and them thinking that they could have saved you, and that a key person in their life is no longer with them prematurely, the likelihood of that leading to depression is actually quite high. Now, as someone that's lived with depression for 13, coming up to 14 years, I would not wish this upon anyone that I love. I wouldn't wish this on most people. Some people are very evil, and I think this would be a nice psychological thing for them to experience. However, let's not get into that. But for someone who I love or even like, I would not wish this upon them. It's a daily torment. So if someone loves you, it's likely that you also love them. And like I said, I wouldn't wish this on someone who I love. Now, if that's several people, you've actually multiplied depression, you've multiplied the suffering that's in the world. Yes, you're no longer experiencing it, but these other people are. And what's even worse is if you're a parent, if you have children, especially if they're young children, they now have completely halved their support network. Their other parent might now experience severe depression. So you might have actually completely destroyed their support network, because if the other parent can't cope, they've essentially got no parents. And then that will completely derail the trajectory of where their life was going. And most likely, you've ruined their life. By doing one simple action of not being there, you've ruined their life. And if you've got multiple kids, that's several lives. And if they end up having kids, you've ruined multiple generations. So I can't help but think how selfish that would be. Obviously, I don't have children, and the reason for that is because, well, one of the reasons is because I'm depressed, and it restricts my option to leave on my own terms. Also, being alive, even if you're not in a particularly good state, you are still part of a support network. You might not be able to help financially, but you can help like emotionally, or if you can't help emotionally, you might be able to help financially. There's multiple ways in which you can help. You can just be someone to talk to. You can be a shoulder to cry on. You can be someone that does a favour. So like, I'm seeing my family this weekend, and my sister is extremely busy all of the time. So I'm going to do some gardening for her. It's not much, but it means a lot. And without me there, that's just more stress on her. And helping people in any which way does make you feel better, even if it's just for a tiny little amount of time. The thought of actually being useful to someone is a good feeling, and it just numbs the pain for a bit. So you can be this useful person for people here and there, and I'd rather take the suffering myself, just one person having the suffering, and give out benefits to people who I love, who I respect, than to essentially remove those benefits of me being alive and to inflict the suffering upon them. Especially if that, once I've left and that suffering leads them to depression, it could be an exponential growth of suffering in the world, and it's just not something that I don't want to leave with a guilty conscience. I want to leave like with the idea I've done the best I can. Especially now, as I'm getting older, I was very certainly atheist, but I'm much more agnostic now, and if there is anything on the other side, having a guilty-free conscience might benefit you. You actually never know. So, yeah, essentially, my family are actually the only reason I'm still here. Because I don't want to hurt them. It doesn't mean that I'll never do it. But it essentially means I just can't do it yet. I don't want my parents to bury their child. That's something I must say. Because I've known my granddad had to bury his child, my stepdad had to bury his child, and I've seen what that does to a parent. I mentioned in another video, I've watched videos of this mom who made a YouTube channel about dealing with this, her son who ended his own life, and it's been almost a decade since she lost him, and she is in a terrible mental state, never recovered. In fact, only really got worse, and I couldn't leave that onto my family. And so yeah, I don't want my parents to bury their child. My sisters, I know they love me, and it would be a shame for them. We do have some potential shared goals, me and my younger sister, of getting land together. Whether we achieve it or not is, well, we'll find out. But with me gone, it will be harder for her to actually manage the land, because I work outside, I work in the countryside, I know people who manage land, and I have a fair amount of knowledge with it, and obviously being a physically healthy man, I can do the work. So if I'm gone, that'll make it much more difficult for her. It won't make it impossible for her, but it will make it more difficult for her. And then both my sisters having kids, I want to be an uncle, because I don't have children. I still want to share knowledge. I want to pass down my knowledge onto the next generation. And they're very young, one's not born yet. But I want to feel that they can be established first to some degree before I go. And also, I'm not decrepit yet. My body's still functioning. It's getting older, but I can still do things. So I wanted to go at 30, but I can't. It would just leave too much destruction behind. And I think this is important for people to understand, that the net gain of suffering in the world, will increase if you disappear. And yes, you may be ill, but you should still be able to see the logic in how that's not a good thing. So, in conclusion, ending it, if you have one person who loves you, is selfish, and you shouldn't do it for just that reason alone. And never say to anyone that ending your life is cowardly, because it's the biggest decision that they will ever make, and it's the scariest decision that they will ever make, because it's the last decision that they will ever make. And once you've done it, you can't go back. You can't undo it. It's done. And there's something just terrifying about it. So, yeah, that's just my food for thought on this subject. It's been my expression of depression on the subject. And I hope, how crazy it may seem, like, I hope people do take some value from this, and that they see that it's worth them sticking around for the people that they love. And if they don't, you can't blame them. You can't blame them for doing what they do, because you just have to understand that their life is filled with so much torment that maybe them going is still in a loss of suffering, despite the fact other people may suffer because of it. You never know what's going on in someone's head, what they have to deal with every single second. And yeah, it's just it's not cowardly. It's really not cowardly. But yeah, my next video probably won't be this down depressing, but it is something I feel like I had to express. Anyway, take care, and I'll see you in the next one.